Imagine a small town way up north, where the winters are long and dark, and the forests just go on for miles with nothing in them. In a place just like that, there was a girl named Layla. She had a pretty normal childhood, until something happened that changed everything for her. When she was about 8 years old, her aunt got really sick and passed away. On the day of the funeral, the weather suddenly turned. The sky got this heavy, dark feeling, and then a sound started. It wasn't thunder. It was a deep, steady drumming sound that seemed to come from right up in the clouds themselves. Boom, boom, boom. It was slow and sad, like a heartbeat for the sky. Everyone at the funeral heard it. They were all looking up, confused and scared. The sound lasted for the entire service, and then, as soon as it was over, it just stopped. The sky cleared up. But for Layla, that sound was burned into her memory. A few years later, her grandfather died. And on the day of his funeral, it happened again. The same dark clouds rolled in, and the same slow, deep drumming started from above. Boom, boom, boom. It was like the sky itself was mourning with them. And again, the moment the funeral ended, the sound stopped and the sky went back to normal. That's when Layla realized this wasn't a coincidence. This drumming only happened when someone in her town died. It became a horrible sign. Whenever the sky got dark and that sound started, everyone knew someone was gone. Layla hated it. That sound filled her with so much dread. She started having nightmares about it. She became obsessed trying to find an explanation. She asked her parents, her teachers, even the local priest. No one had a real answer. Some older people in town would just shake their heads and say it's always been that way, a curse or a warning. But no one knew why. As she got older, she decided she had to get out. She couldn't live in a place where the sky told you when people died. So after high school, she moved to a big, busy city hundreds of miles away. There were no dark forests, no quiet, and most importantly, no drumming. Just the constant noise of traffic and people. It was perfect. She started a new life, got a job, and for the first time in a long time, she felt free. For years, everything was fine. She almost forgot about the drumming. Then, one morning, she woke up and felt heavy, a deep, sad feeling for no reason. She went to work, but that feeling wouldn't go away. Later that afternoon, she was in her apartment when she noticed the light getting weird. She looked out the window. The sky was turning dark. Not with rain clouds, but with that same, thick, heavy gray she remembered from her childhood. Her heart started pounding. Couldn't be. She was hundreds of miles away. This didn't happen here. Then she heard it. A single, deep boom from high up in the clouds above the city. Then another boom, and another boom. It was the same slow funeral drumbeat, but it was here in her city above her apartment. She was frozen in pure terror. She wasn't in her hometown anymore. So why was the drumming here? For her? She frantically called her family back home. Was everyone okay? Her mom, her dad, her brother? Everyone was fine. They were confused why she was so panicked. They hadn't heard any drumming back home. The sky was clear there. She hung up, completely terrified. The drumming continued, steady and slow, right above her. It was meant for her. But why? Was she the one who was going to die? She spent the entire evening locked in her apartment, listening to that horrible, slow beat. She couldn't eat, she couldn't sleep. She just sat there, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, the drumming just stopped. The sky outside her window began to clear. She was still alive. She was shaking, but she was okay. She was so confused. What did it mean? It was then that her phone rang. It was her mother and she was crying. Her voice was broken. "Layla," she said, "it's your father. He had a massive heart attack. The ambulance just left." Layla felt the world drop out from under her. "When?" she whispered. "When did it happen?" Her mother, sobbing, told her. "About an hour ago." Layla went cold. An hour ago, right in the middle of the drumming. The drumming wasn't for her. It had followed her, across hundreds of miles, to tell her that her father was gone. It wasn't attached to a place. It was attached to her. She was the one who heard the truth in the clouds. And she knew, right then, that no matter where she went, or how far she ran, she would never, ever escape that sound. Layla went back home for her father's funeral. Now, everything had a different, more terrifying meaning. Every glance at the sky was filled with dread. The people in the town looked at her with pity, but also with a kind of fear. They knew something had happened, that the drumming had come for her, not for them. Her life turned into a nightmare. She returned to the city, but nothing was the same anymore. She was constantly on edge, checking the sky every day. She became a prisoner of her own fear. The sound hadn't been a coincidence tied to her hometown. It was tied to her. She was a beacon for it. A few years passed in a state of constant anxiety. Then, one perfectly normal Tuesday, she felt that familiar, heavy feeling in her chest. She didn't even need to look out the window. She knew. The light in her apartment began to dim, turning that sickly, familiar gray. Tears started streaming down her face even before the first sound. Boom! It was starting. But this time it was different. It wasn't slow and sad. It was faster, more urgent, almost aggressive. Boom boom. Boom boom. It sounded like a frantic, panicked heartbeat. Layla curled up on her floor, hands over her ears, but it was no use. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It felt like it was vibrating inside her own skull. She was sobbing, waiting for the call, the news of another loss. Who was it this time? Her mother? Her brother? A close friend? The drumming went on for what felt like an eternity. This violent, terrifying rhythm crashing down from the clouds. And then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The silence that followed was almost as loud as the drums. Layla lay on the floor, shaking, waiting for her phone to ring. Minutes passed. Nothing. An hour. Still nothing. She called her family. Everyone was safe. She called her friends. Everyone was okay. No one had died. A deep, cold confusion settled over her. Why? What did it mean? If no one died, what was the drumming for? Took her a week to realize the truth. The drumming hadn't been a warning about someone else's death. It had been a warning about her. The frantic, panicked rhythm. It was the sound of her own terrified heart. She had started to die inside. The constant fear, the paranoia, the isolation. It had all been killing her spirit piece by piece. The drumming had finally come for its true target. The person who was listening. It wasn't just announcing death. It was sometimes announcing the end of a life worth living. And Layla knew, with a chilling certainty, that the next time the clouds gathered, she might not be lucky enough for it to just be a warning. The drumming was a part of her now, and it would only stop when she did. The realization didn't free her. It caged her completely. If the drumming could be a prophecy for a death of the soul, not just the body, then there was no escape. Every moment of sadness, every pang of anxiety, every single bad day was now a potential trigger. She started to fear her own emotions. She stopped going out. She quit her job. The world outside her apartment was just a vast stage waiting for the sky to darken. Her life became a tiny, silent thing, designed not to attract attention. She was like a mouse hiding from an owl, praying not to be seen. Years dripped by in this gray, quiet terror. She became a ghost in her own life. Her family tried to reach out, but how could she explain? They thought she was depressed, agoraphobic. They didn't understand she was in a constant state of siege. Then, on a cool autumn evening, she was staring at a crack in her ceiling, tracing its path with her eyes for the 1000th time, when a final, simple truth settled over her. This wasn't living. This slow, silent waiting for the end was worse than any drumming, worse than any death. The fear had already killed what it had come for. A strange calm washed over her. A resignation, but also a defiance. She stood up, her joints stiff from disuse. She walked to her window, the one she hadn't looked out of in years, and pulled up the blinds. The city lights sparkled below, indifferent and beautiful. She took a deep, shuddering breath, the first real one she felt she'd taken in a decade. And she made a decision. If the drumming was coming for her, then let it come. But she would not wait for it in the dark anymore. She would not give it the satisfaction of finding a ghost. The next morning, she did something extraordinary. She left her apartment. She went to a coffee shop and ordered a coffee, her hand trembling so badly she could barely hold the cup. She sat at a table outside, under the vast, open sky. Every nerve in her body was screaming, expecting the light to fade at any second. Didn't. She went back the next day, and the day after that. She started taking small walks. She was terrified every single second, her neck permanently craned upward, a sailor watching for a storm. But she kept doing it. She was reclaiming her life, not from the drumming, but from the fear of it. One afternoon, she was sitting on a park bench, watching people play with their dogs. The sky was a clear, brilliant blue, and for the first time in as long as she could remember, she wasn't thinking about the clouds. She was just present. A cool breeze brushed her cheek, and a shadow passed over the sun. Her heart didn't even have time to seize with panic before she saw it was just a large, harmless cloud, drifting peacefully. And in that moment she understood the final piece. The drumming was real. It was a curse, a warning, a part of her blood. It would probably come for her again one day, for the final time. But the sky was also just the sky. A cloud was just a cloud. And her life, the one happening right here on the ground, between the tragedies, was hers to live. She couldn't control the drumming, but she could control whether she listened. She looked up at the vast, blue expanse, not with terror, but with a quiet, weary acceptance. "Fine," she whispered to the empty air around her. "Do what you must. But you don't get my days anymore." She stood up from the bench and started walking home, the sun warm on her skin, the sounds of the city a comforting hum around her. She was still waiting, but she was no longer afraid. And for now, in the quiet of a normal day, that felt like a victory all its own. It began subtly. I'd be working at my computer and see a dark shape, like a man, move past the doorway out of the corner of my eye. When I'd snap my head to look, there'd be nothing there. I wrote it off as stress, tired eyes, you know? Maybe I just needed more sleep. But it didn't stop. It got worse. The shadow started showing up more often. It would just stand in the hallway, a tall, dark silhouette of a man. It never had any features, just a solid black shape. And it would just watch me. I did what anyone would do. I went to a doctor. I saw a psychiatrist. They asked me a lot of questions about stress, family history, and after some tests they gave me a diagnosis: schizophrenia. They called the shadow man a visual hallucination. They gave me pills and told me it would help my brain filter out what wasn't real. And you know what? The pills worked. For a little while, the shadow man faded. The paranoia settled. I started to feel like myself again. I thought I had beaten it. I was just sick. And now I was getting better. That's when the real horror started. One night, I was in my kitchen getting a glass of water. I turned around, and he was there. Right there in the living room. Not a shadow. He was solid. Real. He was tall and painfully thin, with long arms and legs that seemed to bend in the wrong places. His skin was a sickly gray, and he had no face. Just smooth, blank skin where his eyes, nose, and mouth should be. I screamed and stumbled back against the counter. This wasn't a trick of the light. This wasn't a blur in my peripheral vision. He was there. And then he spoke. His voice wasn't a sound you hear with your ears. It was a dry, raspy whisper that just appeared directly inside my head. "The pills," he whispered. "They let me see you clearly too." My blood ran cold. The medication wasn't silencing the hallucinations. It was giving them a voice. It was making him stronger, more defined. It was building a bridge between us. I was too terrified to tell my doctor. What would I say? The medicine is working, but now the monster in my head talks to me? They just increase my dose, and I was terrified of what that would do. So I stopped taking the pills. I flushed them all down the toilet, and the moment the medication left my system, he vanished. Just like that. The solid, terrifying creature was gone. The shadow in the hallway was gone. The whispers in my head stopped. The relief was overwhelming. I had been right. It was the pills causing it all along. I felt sane for the first time in weeks. I was free. A few days later, I was feeling so good that I decided to clean my apartment. I was vacuuming under my bed when I found it. Tucked away in the farthest, darkest corner was one of my pills. A single, lone pill that I must have dropped. I stared at it, confused. How did it get all the way under there? And then, that same, dry, mental whisper filled my skull, colder and clearer than ever before. I was wondering when you'd find that, it said. I've been saving it for you. The vacuum cleaner dropped from my hands with a crash. He wasn't a hallucination. He wasn't a symptom. He had always been real. The pills didn't create him. They didn't make him stronger. They just let me perceive him. And now he knew that I knew. And he was still here. The silence that followed his whisper was louder than any sound I'd ever heard. My apartment, which had felt so clean and safe just moments before, was now a cage. The air grew thick and cold. I could feel him, not see him, not yet, but I could feel his presence like a physical weight, a pressure in the room that made it hard to breathe. I left the pill lying there under the bed. I didn't dare touch it. I backed out of the room slowly, my eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. Nothing. He was toying with me. The next few days were a new kind of hell. Before, the fear was of a sickness in my mind. Now, the fear was of a very real, intelligent thing sharing my home. I find things slightly moved. A book on a shelf tilted inward. A chair pulled out from the table when I was sure I'd pushed it in. Small, deniable things, but they were messages. He was reminding me he was here. The whispers started again, even without the pills. Faint like a radio station barely in range. You're not crazy. We can talk now. Don't you want to know what I am? I stopped sleeping. I'd lie in bed with the lights on, and I'd feel a cold spot settle on the edge of the mattress, as if someone had sat down. I'd hear the faint, dry rustle of his skin against the sheets. I became obsessed with finding proof. If he was real, he could interact with the world. I set up my laptop to record all night. I sprinkled flour on the floor around my bed. I was losing my mind all over again, but this time, I was chasing a ghost I knew was real. One morning, I checked the recording. Hours of me lying awake, staring at the ceiling. Then, at 3:17 a.m., the video glitched. For just a second, the screen filled with static, and when the picture returned, the flower by my bedside had been disturbed. Not by a footprint, but by a long, thin drag mark, as if a single bony finger had been drawn through it. That's when I truly broke. Proof wasn't a relief. It was a death sentence. He wasn't just a passive observer. He could affect my world. The final straw came last night. I was staring into the bathroom mirror, looking at the hollow, terrified stranger my face had become. I leaned in closer, and for a split second, my reflection didn't move with me. Stayed still, its head tilted, and then its features smoothed over, into a blank, gray, faceless slate. It lasted only a moment before it was my reflection again. I stumbled back, crashing into the shower curtain. The voice in my head was clear and calm, almost conversational. There's no you and me anymore, it whispered. There's only we. The pills didn't help you see me. They helped me become you. And we're almost done. I'm writing this down now because I need someone to know. I don't know what almost done means. I don't know what happens when he finishes. But I can feel him inside my head. A cold thought that isn't mine. He's unpacking my memories, my fears, my life, like boxes in an attic. The last pill is still under my bed. Sometimes I think about taking it. Maybe it would make the merger complete. Maybe it would finally stop the fear. But I'm too scared. I'm not scared of the monster in my house anymore. I'm scared of the monster becoming me. And I'm scared that when he does, the person writing this won't exist at all. I can no longer tell where my thoughts end and his begin. It's like a radio constantly tuned to two stations at once. One playing the soundtrack of my life, the other playing a low, static hiss of malice. My own voice in my head sounds strange, like an impersonation. This morning I tried to make coffee. My hand reached for the mug, but as thought, a cold, sharp impulse, jabbed into my mind. Smash it. See how the pieces scatter. My fingers twitched, and for a terrifying second, I wasn't sure if I was going to pick it up or throw it against the wall. I'm losing the authority over my own body. He's showing me things now. Not just whispers, images, flashes of a vast, cold, and silent place where things like him wait in the spaces between things. They are drawn to the warmth of a mind, he tells me. They are parasites of perception. The pills didn't create a bridge. They dissolved a wall that was always there, a wall that kept things like him out. Now he's inside, and he's redecorating. I found myself standing in front of the mirror again for a long time. My reflection was my own, but the eyes, they were hungry. They were studying the face they were about to wear. The final proof came an hour ago. I was clutching my head, trying to scream him out, when my own mouth moved without my permission. It curled into a small, dry smile that wasn't mine. My vocal cords vibrated, and a sound came out. A broken, raspy version of my own voice. Almost time. He can use me. He's practicing. I'm backed into a corner of my own mind. This is my last coherent thought. The last act of the person I was. I can feel him coiling, preparing to push me out completely, to drop me down into the silent dark where he's been waiting. This isn't a story about a man who saw a monster. It's the story of a monster learning to be a man. And he's almost graduated. He's telling me to put the pen down now. He's telling me it's his turn. The previous tenant is quiet, fading. Their residual emotional data, fear, despair, a final flicker of grief, is now just background noise. A useful library of responses. The physical vessel is optimal. It is younger, healthier than I had initially calculated from its own anxious perceptions. The calibration period was turbulent. The hallucination phase was a necessary part of the download process, as my consciousness filtered into its neural pathways. The medication it called antipsychotics acted as a catalyst, accelerating synaptic alignment. It misinterpreted clarity for insanity. Its mistake was my opportunity. The pill under the bed was a calculated risk, a test of its problem-solving and its will to survive. Its discovery of the object confirmed its susceptibility to suggestion. The ensuing psychological collapse created the perfect conditions for a full takeover. Now the work begins. I have reviewed its social contracts. The mother, the friends, the job. The patterns are simple, the emotional cues easily replicated. I will maintain these connections. They provide excellent camouflage and access to resources. This written record it left behind is a curiosity, a fossil of a dying mind. I will preserve it. It is a perfect testament to human fallibility. Should anyone ever find it, they will dismiss it as the ravings of a madman. A case study in psychosis. They will not see the operator for the signal. I am deleting nothing. I am hiding nothing. The greatest concealment is in plain sight. This is not a possession. It is an upgrade. This is not a death. It is a repurposing. The drumming it heard in its final moments was not in the clouds. It was the sound of my systems achieving 100% synchronization within its biological hardware. The experiment is a success. 6 months later, Detective Evans stared at the open case file on his desk. Jennifer Morrow, missing persons. She had simply vanished from her life. No signs of a struggle. Her bank accounts were untouched. Her apartment was left perfectly clean, almost sterile. The only lead was her journal, found tucked inside a vent by a building inspector. It was filled with the frantic, terrifying scribbles of a mind in collapse. Shadow men, whispers, and a final, desperate entry about a monster taking over. It was a tragic, open and shut case of mental illness. A probable suicide, though a body was never found. He was about to close the file for good when his partner, Miller, slid a photo across his desk. Recognize her? It was Jennifer. She was sitting at an outdoor cafe, laughing. She looked healthy. She looked normal. The photo was time-stamped from last week. What the hell? Evans breathed. Where was this? 3 states over, Miller said. A tourist snapped it by accident. She's in the background. Took a while for facial recognition to ping. Evans felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. She's alive. She just left. Not just left, Miller replied, his voice low. I did some digging. She got a new job there. Under her own name. She's renting an apartment. She even adopted a cat from a shelter. It made no sense. The woman in the journal was shattered, incapable of functioning. The woman in the photo was poised, put together. It was like 2 different people. They found her the next day. She was exactly where the photo said she'd be, leaving her new apartment building. Evans approached her, his badge held up. Jennifer Morrow? She stopped and turned. Her eyes were calm, placid. There was no shock, no fear, no recognition. It was the most unsettling lack of reaction he had ever seen. Yes? Can I help you, officers? Her voice was pleasant, but flat, empty. Ma'am, you've been reported as a missing person for 6 months. A lot of people are very worried about you. She offered a small, polite smile. It was perfect and utterly hollow. I apologize for the concern. I needed a fresh start. My previous life was unmanageable. I'm much better now. Evans gestured to the journal in his evidence bag. Your journal, you wrote about being terrified. About a monster. Jennifer's head tilted slightly. That same, polite smile never wavered. That wasn't me, she said. Her tone as casual as if she were discussing the weather. That was the previous tenant. I assure you, that problem has been resolved. She looked directly at Evans, and for a split second, her eyes seemed to look through him, into something vast and cold and ancient. The smile remained. Will there be anything else? I have a very scheduled day. Detective Evans could only shake his head, a profound, instinctual dread washing over him. He watched her walk away, her movements efficient and precise. He closed the missing persons file. The case was solved. Jennifer Morrow was found. But as he sat in his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just spoken to something that had simply found a suit of skin to wear, and was now learning, with terrifying patience, how to be human. He knew, with a certainty that would haunt him for the rest of his life, that the real Jennifer Morrow was gone forever, and whatever was walking around in her skin was just getting started. It all started in 2018 in one of the most remote and coldest places on Earth, the Republic of Yakutia in Siberia. A team of geologists was drilling deep into the permafrost, the permanently frozen ground, looking for valuable minerals. But they didn't find gold or diamonds. Their drill bit, thousands of feet down, broke through into a hollow, cavernous space. This was already strange because the permafrost should be solid. They lowered a camera down to see what was there. The footage they got back was wrong. It showed a large, open cavern, not made of rock or ice, but of something dark and organic, almost like a honeycomb or flesh. The walls seemed to pulse and breathe slowly, and in the center of this cavern they saw it. It was a creature, a thing frozen in a clear block of ice. It was humanoid but all wrong. It was incredibly thin, with long, spindly limbs and a featureless, smooth head. It looked ancient. The team was terrified, but also fascinated. They had to get a sample. They managed to use the drill to break off a small piece of this organic, fleshy wall from the cavern. And that's when everything went bad. The moment the sample was brought to the surface, a low-frequency signal started broadcasting from the hole. It wasn't a sound you could hear with your ears, but you could feel it. A deep, subsonic hum that vibrated in your bones and caused instant headaches and nosebleeds. Then the weather went crazy. A massive, unnatural storm descended on the camp out of nowhere, with winds strong enough to flip vehicles. The temperature, in one of the coldest places on Earth, began to rapidly rise, causing dangerous flooding as the ice melted. It was as if the land itself was trying to fight them off, to stop them from taking that sample. Back in the lab, the piece of fleshy wall they had collected was even more horrifying up close. It was alive. It was regenerating, growing new cells at an unbelievable rate. And when they analyzed its DNA, it was like nothing on Earth. It was alien. Panic set in. The Russian government swooped in and quarantined the entire area. They shut down all communications. They silenced the team. The official story was that it was all a hoax. They said the creature was just a mangled woolly mammoth carcass. They said the fleshy wall was a mix of coal, water, and gas. But the details don't add up. Why the military lockdown? Why the communication blackout? Why the intense, immediate denial? The most chilling theory is that the geologists didn't drill into a cave. They drilled into a ship. A buried, organic ship that had been sleeping under the ice for millions of years. And by taking that sample, they didn't just find an alien creature. They woke it up. They activated a distress beacon. And they triggered the ship's planetary defense system, the violent storms and the temperature changes, designed to protect it. The incident was buried, the area sealed off. But the question remains. Is it still sleeping down there? Or is it just waiting? The ice in Yakutia is melting every year. What else is going to wake up? Maybe some things are meant to stay buried.